How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want?
I'll have an old-fashioned.
I'll have a margarita.
Now you can with the new Bartesian Duet Home Cocktail Maker. The new Bartesian Duet, Bartesian's most compact cocktail maker, crafts premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian Duet Cocktail Maker. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian Duet is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Hurry, offer ends soon. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail. Bartesian.com/cocktail.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, Christmas. And what better way to get into the holiday spirit than with a Minky Couture blanket? Whether you're gathered around the tree with loved ones, roasting marshmallows by the fire, or just looking for a cozy way to stay warm on a chilly night, Minky blankets are the perfect addition to your Christmas festivities. With a wide range of festive designs and colors, you can find the perfect blanket to match your holiday decor or gift to your loved ones. So this Christmas, make your holiday even cozier with a Minky Couture blanket. Head to minkycouture.com now and find your perfect blanket, just in time for the holiday. Happy holidays from Minky Couture.
Steering wheel. Lots of steering wheel here. Give him steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on. Whoa.
Do you like my face? Do you like it?
How the f*** is that possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? On the radio. The rest of the race. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close it down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down the Hanger Straight.
I am so annoyed.
Welcome back, Parc Fermians. Welcome to the Parc Fermé for podcast number 743, the Hungarian Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I do. Yes, it is the Hungarian Grand Prix. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it.
That's exactly what we do. But before doing that, of course, I have to bring in somebody that actually knows what they're talking about when we talk about racing. And in order to do that, I got to go all the way south to Dallas-Fort Worth area. You know him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm good. Look, I've been working. See that? Look,
oh, wow.
That's a sign.
What have you been?
Idiot trying to change a steering rack on an Integra.
Oh, not
Why would
good.
I do that? Yeah, no.
Well, you're doing that because, you're saving yourself about $3,000.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. But I feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like, where's this bulb go? I don't know. Lucky I'm involved in racing. Yeah. That's why they don't give me any spanners anymore.
Right. Paul, you don't actually make the race cars. You just race them. You're more
right.
You're more the Kimi than you are.
Yeah, point them in the right direction.
Right. Right.
Paddock.
Right. Out that way. Yep. Clockwise at this track. Yeah.
Oh, I missed the drives meeting. Yes. So, yeah.
Oh my! But did you get the Hungarian Grand Prix squeezed into your hectic schedule, being that you were down at Coda all weekend?
I did. I had to do it in parts. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I got the TV F1 app. But so we were racing the McLaren down at Coda, and so I saw a bit, then stopped it, then saw a bit, and during the break. So it's a bit bitty, should I say? But probably a better way to watch it. It was a bit bitty of a race, really, when you think about it.
Kind of was too, yeah. So do they ever still drag Mika Hakkinen out to those McLaren events and have him glad hand? And
I've never seen Mika Hakkinen. This wasn't a McLaren event. We just happened to be racing McLaren at a GT race, not an IMSA race or anything like that. It was more a low-key race, but anyway.
Gotcha.
So the Speed Club is another group I work with, and so we were putting a rookie guy in his first ever race in a McLaren. So he had some good times. Yeah.
What kind of McLaren was it?
It's a GT4 570S. Yeah, so it's a full out race car.
Nice car.
Yeah.
Fast.
It's fast.
Does it sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. It's got slicky tires on it, you know.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
The S's, lots of great.
So as you sit in your IMSA pit and listen to the cars go by, which one sounds the best?
The GTLM Porsche.
Really?
Yeah, that one screams still. Yeah.
That's cool.
So many of them have been muted by, BOP and rev limits and things like that, but that one still makes a hell of a racket.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Although I think your guys' Aston sounds pretty good too.
Oh, it does. It's just a different thing. It's not as high pitched or anything like that.
Right.
It's It's like stealth.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I remember when I first went to Petit Le Mans, right when Audi came out with the diesel. R8, and you had the Fords, everybody just screaming, the Corvettes and everything, get those big V8s just growling, and then all of a sudden it goes that Audi. But it was going like 180 miles an hour. And
it was cool, wasn't it?
It was really cool.
The R18 was a whole nother thing when they brought in the hybrid stuff.
Yeah.
That was crazy. That thing.
Nuts. Speaking of hybrids.
Yeah. Your favorite thing.
Yeah. So we had a bit of a hybrid weekend. Had some racing, had some first lap nutter stuff going on.
Yeah.
Had some, some spitting rain just before the race.
Yep.
A lot of stuff going on. Before we get into reviewing the race, let's talk about a couple things. So the track isn't known, Paul, as a prolific passing opportunity track. And even with two DRS, try this in English, DRS zones. I was watching this. Now, I may be completely wrong. If I am, feel free to set me straight once again. Okay. But I was looking at where those DRS zones were, and they were back-to-back, front straight and the next straight. And it seemed like to me that at that track, I understand why they had two of them, because it seemed like to me it was really tough for anyone in the second or third sector to get up close enough to, by the time they got to that DRS zone, to really make hay with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not enough DRS zones you could put in Hungary to make it. It's really, they'd really have to reprofile that last turn, because the last turn is so aero dependent. That's really what's stopping them getting super close, right? So they'd have to make that. If they made that a real tight turn, then the front straight would be a more apt passing area. But right now, you've really got to gain some kind of advantage with your tires, or your tire choice or tire life, or somehow reserving your power. To maximize at the right time when your opponent's got it wrong to really make a clean pass. Yeah, so with that, it was still, even with two DRS zones, I kind of thought, well, it's still going to be a little difficult to pass here. We need something else. So why not rain? So that's kind of what happened. Kind of.
So, kind of. It kind of spit rain just before the start. And it was the kind of rain that wasn't soaking, but enough to prompt inters as they gridded up. And that kind of neutered that whole soft compound for Red Bull, medium compound Mercedes. You kind of threw all of that out of the window, right? And so everybody's on inters. And then we'll get into what happened with that. But what makes this track kind of unique in that sense is that I will say the track drains and dries quickly.
That's summer,
Yeah, right. And it was hot, right? So, a lot of time, Paul, people call this Monaco without the walls. What makes this track kind of unique in that sense, or is difficult like that from a Monaco perspective? We think of Monaco, it's like, I don't know who it was Piquet or whatever, or Prost said it was like riding a 10-speed bike in a bathroom, because that's the walls there. But what makes this track that difficult?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that, but it's a bit more of an enlarged version. But because the straights are so short, and then there's followed by a complexity of turns, not just one turn for the most part, it's one turn leaning onto another, that's why the passing, and that's why technically it's difficult. And when we always talk about that flow at Monaco, right? Same thing happens to happen in Hungary because the turns come up in quick succession. There's no time to reset yourself. So even you come through one, you can rest a little bit, then the rest you go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of those kind of blend into one. So there's no time to rest, and you get it wrong one place, it's going to hurt you for the rest of that whole section.
Right. And then before we get into the race review, I want to ask you the whole thing with gamesmanship.
Yeah.
And qualifying. So I was watching it in real time as it unfolded, and they had Nico Rosberg doing color commentary because Martin was gone.
Nico. Yes, Nico.
Yes, Nico.
So excited to be here in the booth, guys.
He was. Yeah. He was. And I appreciated that he knew he had a British audience, so that was good too.
The funny thing was, though, I think I started on F1 TV. Obviously, did it the whole time in F1 TV. But the beginning of the race was commentated by the regular F1 TV people. And then they went to a break, and then all of a sudden it was the Sky people.
Oh.
Thank God, is all I'm going to say, because I was in a state of panic at the beginning there when they started calling the race. I was like, whoa. Is there an alternative feed? I need the BBC right now, But luckily, Sky saved the day again. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Nico was pretty good. I thought he was.
Yeah, no, he did fine. Yeah, he did fine.
Too excitable. He was very analytical, which is good.
Yeah. No, he's got recent experience, and good grief, he knows that Team Mercedes real well. So and I thought he was insightful as well. And I thought he did a good job. I think JB does a good job when he's there because he gets it, and I think PDR and Ant do a fabulous job too.
So,
and Martin too. They all get good.
Yeah, Martin.
What I don't get enough of is Crofty really making it clear how much he's a hardcore runner,
Again with the running.
Just a picture of health and vitality, that Crofty. So let's talk about the gamesmanship. So while it was actually going on for the final run in qualifying, Lewis comes out in Mercedes, Max comes out behind him, Perez behind Max, and they're behind Lewis. Now, as soon as they got behind, they showed the picture down the pit lane, and you could see Lewis looking in his mirrors going really slow in the pit lane, right? Max is on his tail. But even when he gets out of the pit where you normally hit it and go, all the way out from the white line, all the way on to the traffic, knowing that you can't just go around him because you'll cross the white line.
Right.
So you have to get past that white line. So even when he got down, it wasn't until he got out there. And so... Lewis was like, well, everybody's backed up in front of me. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, they are all backing up, going slower ahead of you, but not like right ahead of you. There was nobody right ahead of you, Right. And so when it was happening, Nico knew and said, look at the games, man. Because,
he's
been there, right?
Yeah.
And so, the Sky crew knew it was gamesmanship. And, and then everybody got all irate for suggesting that Lewis was doing anything untoward or any sort of gamesmanship. Clearly, Red Bull knew that what was going on because it cost Perez a hot lap, right? And to Horner's credit, he said, it's his prerogative to do that. And who knows, if the role was reversed, we may have done the same thing. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's all fun and love and war right here. If you don't want to get stuck behind Lewis and let him control you, then go out before him.
Right.
He's got that's big boy club again.
It is. Yeah. Welcome to the majors.
Yeah. It's fine. It's kind of fun. There's tricks like that go on, not just from Formula One, but all the way down to Formula Ford and karting and everything like that. Yeah. So it's not new, but it was just obvious, especially with the ramifications from the last race. I think it was just people getting a bit excitable about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure it happens in the pit lane quite a bit, and we just don't see it. But the cameras were so focused on both of them, it was pretty obvious.
Right. They're waiting to see the fireworks. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, all right, let's jump into the race. So at the start of the race, it's spit rain just before the race. So that meant that everybody started on the inters. And then everybody went into turn one and became basically Bottas fodder at that point. And that caused a red flag. Then they were parked. And then when they restarted, everybody dove in. So we'll get into that element once we get down to Lewis, and we'll talk about kind of what happened on that restart. Okay. But up top, let's talk about who won the race. Esteban Ocon in P1.
What?
I know. Everybody's like, what the hell? Exactly.
It's been my whipping boy half the season. Now I'm feeling.
I know. All this time we were beating up on him and everything. And we had Fernando Alonso in P4. Right? So that's good. Fernando in many ways was the hero of this race, man. Yeah. I mean, and for Alpine, really. Alpine, sorry. Yeah. Even though Esteban did an equally incredible job and won the race, he drove impeccably, right? He most likely would not have won that race had Fernando not done what he did, and basically handing that win. Alonso ran one of the best tail gunner rolls I can recall since Schumacher did it for Eddie Irvine in 1999, leaving Irvine to say, you remember this, Paul? Not only is he the best driver on the grid, he's the best number 2 driver on the grid. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so Fernando, that's what Fernando did by shutting down a charging Lewis Hamilton and costing him just enough time so that by the time Alonso's tires did give up and Lewis got around him, there wasn't enough laps for Lewis to chase down Vettel and Ocon. And this
really enough laps.
It's
close. Yeah,
it was close, man, because Lewis was flying. I mean, Lewis was on it, 10 tenths, and finished just off of Vettel, right? But it was just enough time, right? And so it was fantastic. Could not catch up. This allowed Esteban, basically handed him the win. But Esteban had to do his own work, right? But what a great defense. I think even Lewis had made mention. I haven't read the whole article. I think I saw a headline earlier today, but I've been busy. Something about Lewis saying, that was like a master class and all new race lines that I wasn't even sure that were there, but that was so cool because
he was fit to be tired at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was irate, he was mad, and who wouldn't be, right?
Yeah,
he's trying to win. I'd be on the radio making something out of it. Yeah. But gosh, what a defensive driving masterclass, Paul.
Yep. No, it was fun to watch, right? I mean, because obviously Lewis had a ton of speed on him, and when you saw what easy work Lewis did to make of Sainz and people like that, you can see what Alonso was doing differently in ways held in such high regard. I mean, he's obviously very quick. He grabs a car with a scruff of the neck, but he's a very, very sly competitor, both attacking and defending, and that was a master class. I enjoyed the heck out of that.
Oh,
really.
I did too.
And I know Lewis was really frustrated, and obviously you heard him on the radio. But I think in the end, he's going to relish that time when he's retired and everything. That duel with him and Alonso. Not often you get to do battle with two drivers of such high skill level, and see them duke it out and figure out how to fight each other.
Right. I mean, it was awesome to watch both of them do that. And it wasn't just like, oh, he's weaving it. If you go back and look at those few laps, I went back and watched them again because it wasn't just Alonso weaving under braking and doing crazy stuff. It was how he would pause on the exit just to balk him and get him off the throttle. Right. And it was just all the stuff, Paul, that you guys as drivers know. Mm-hmm. But for us sitting at home and watching that, we just think, well, defensive driving, you're moving and braking and you're getting in front of him. No, it's the racing lines you're choosing. It's when to get on throttle, when to start braking, to brake early, to brake later, but then slow out of the corner, making him balk and lift. And then as soon as he lifts, it's just everything that you guys do. It was a master class in that.
Yeah, it's good fun, As I said, it's good fun passing people, but being able to run a car, race against the car and mirrors and hold them off for a long time. And sometimes you can wear people down enough where they end up.
How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want?
I'll have an old-fashioned.
I'll have a margarita.
Now you can with the new Bartesian Duet home cocktail maker. The new Bartesian Duet, Bartesian's most compact cocktail maker, crafts premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian Duet cocktail maker. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian Duet is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Hurry, offer ends soon. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail, bartesian.com/cocktail.
Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Common Threads are helping schools across the country learn about healthier food preparation. In Atlanta, they're joined by The Dream and will provide education, recipes, and knowledge to students and families about healthier options. Visit anthem.com/dream to learn more. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is the trade name of Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthcare Plan of Georgia, Inc.
Back in a way, and you can actually make a gap on them. It's not just a foregone conclusion just because they closed up on you that eventually they're going to get past. You can actually wear someone out and them actually lose focus and disappear as a threat in the end sometimes.
And to, in Lewis's credit, he's got to get around him if he has any chance of winning this, right?
Yeah.
And here's where Lewis is, yes, he was trying everything to get around him and trying creative lines and trying to do different things. And Lewis was trying his own creative lines that he may not have chosen before, trying to get around him, right? Mm-hmm. So Lewis, at the pinnacle of his driving skill and trying to get around him. But also, Paul, he has to manage his tires because he can't chew them up. I mean, Alonso's tires are much older, whatever. But if Lewis does get around him, he's got to have the tires to catch up with Vettel and Ocon and win. And so he, in his mind and the way that he was driving, he couldn't just overcook his tires on Alonso because then it wouldn't work.
No.
And he didn't do it.
You got to still have a knife to fight with once you make the move, if you make it happen. And as we saw with some closer battles when Vettel was trying to get to Ocon, it's so easy to get the air in front of you, lock up a tire, and there you go. There's some of that performance of the tire that's never coming back again.
Right. And it's clear that Lewis didn't cook his tires trying to do it, because once he got around Alonso, then Lewis took off and was really reeling him in. He still had tire left there, so credit to Lewis for that. But and on Esteban's side, I mean, my gosh, he drove a complete race, Paul. He picked the right line through turn 1, as did Vettel, and then he held the German off for the entire afternoon without putting a foot wrong. And this meant that they were the only midfield team to get both cars into the points, was Alpine, and that was great. Fernando's first victory came in 2003 in Hungary, and now Esteban joins him for his first victory in Hungary in 2021. This team, despite being Alpine or Renault or whatever it's been called over the years, but this Instone team has been through a lot over the years, and it is absolutely terrific to see them win. And the one thing I'm just sad about is Alon wasn't there. Prost wasn't there this weekend.
Yeah, crazy, right? He's not going to show up anymore if he thinks he's a bad jinx.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So great drive by Esteban, though. And there have been some question marks, and even you and I have offered question marks on the podcast about Esteban, and then they just inked a new 2-year long-term deal with him. We're thinking,
a bit of a surprise. Yeah,
it was a little bit of a surprise, but my gosh, he certainly had the pace. He didn't crack. Certainly drove that race like a race-winning driver.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to get an opportunity, especially if you're driving an Alpine, right? So when you get it, it'll be very easy to let the emotions and the moment go beyond and lose your focus and make a little mistake, especially when you've got someone like Sebastian Vettel running on your tail literally for 65 laps or whatever it is. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really put a foot wrong as far as I can tell. And Seb was trying everything he could. So it was a good heads up. I mean, he hasn't sparkled, he hasn't set the world on fire. But what he has done now is, obviously won a race, but I think this is going to do a world of good for his confidence going out there. And I think, with what Alonso did for him, I think that's even more powerful for the team as a whole, really. As
I do too.
Everyone's fighting for the same cause,
Yeah. I think that was a real team. Not that they weren't gelled. I'm sure they were, but I think that just really brought that whole team together, with Alonso and that supporting role from Esteban. And Alonso, waited, there for Esteban to come to the podium and gave him a big hug. Certainly part of the team there. I thought that was great. Yeah, it was a great move by them. And Esteban was certainly under a lot of pressure from Seb. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
It kind of reminds me of the, the Pierre Gasly win, at Monza, sort of cars out of position, had some attrition. Yes, that all plays a role. And yes, had Lewis not had his issue, had Max not had his issue, Esteban wouldn't have won that race. But that's Formula One, and that's how Pierre won that race. But Pierre had a lot of pressure, brought it home, didn't put a foot wrong. That's kind of what Ocon did.
And I can't remember, where did Ocon qualify? He qualified really high too, though, right?
Yeah, he qualified well. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, 7th, 5th, in that range.
So that's once again, he could have easily been out in Q2, right? The opportunity where there arose. So, qualifying up, even if you don't think you're going to have anything for the Red Bull or the Mercedes team, or even the Ferrari team for that matter, good qualifying position gives you the first chance out of everyone behind you to reap the rewards when there's a big issue like we had.
Yeah, exactly. For Aston Martin, you had Lance Stroll, a DNF, Sebastian Vettel, P2.
Provision.
Yeah, and I'm putting them in here in our race review. I realize that there's a disqualification, and you may ask, well, why, if you hadn't heard, but because they finished here. But ultimately, the team had underfueled Seb's car, and while he had a terrific run to P2, he was given a disqualified for not having the required 1 liter of fuel at the end of the race for testing by the FIA. Now, this has been the case for years. All the teams, including this team, know that. And it was interesting. I'll get into that in a minute. So Seb pressed Ocon hard for, like you said, 65 or 70 laps. Just couldn't get around the Frenchman, even with DRS. And that's where I was kind of noticing, that last turn and the sector 2. It was difficult for anyone to really make the most out of that DRS range. And I think with 2 cars relatively equal on pace there, it was difficult for Seb to make that happen. Yeah. Yep. He was close many times, under a second, but just couldn't get past. So it was interesting. And I was kind of interested, Sky Sports had said that during commentaries when Seb parked right after the race and parked his car and got out, and they were like, obviously he must be low on fuel or out of fuel, and they make, it's not a big deal if he's out of fuel. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, no, it is a big deal.
It is a big deal, yeah.
Because you have to have a leader. Now, you and I've known this, in the regulations. Certainly you can read it, but it was kind of brought to our attention. I remember when we were working with Shell, they made a big deal about this 1 liter. You have to have 1 liter left in that car. And I remember talking to Guy Lovett at Shell about that and how technical they are on that. And he said, absolutely, there is no forgiveness. You have to pull 1 liter out of that.
Yeah, I think it was Canada that we saw that before. I can't remember who it was though.
Was it a BMW? Was it Kubica or somebody? I don't remember.
I can't remember, but that was big.
Yeah, this has happened before for sure. Right. So it's not unprecedented. They knew that, but it doesn't take anything away from Seb's drive, though. It was a great drive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've read into it a little bit, and they said there might have had a lift pump issue. So basically,
they did appeal it, right?
Yeah, they've appealed it, and they say there is enough fuel in there. It just wasn't able to be extricated, gotten out of the car. That was way too long a word for me to attempt right there. But so basically, there's a lift pump, which is a secondary pump or an initial pump to pump the fuel into the right place for the actual fuel pump to pump the fuel into the engine. So that would be the same thing that they use to pump out also. So basically, you got your fuel tank, and then you've got a little cup of fuel that actually feeds into the engine, right? So you don't have a bunch of pickups in the corners of the deal, because
the bladder,
you just don't have that anymore. So they've actually got individual little pickups in the bladder, but also a centralized lift pump that brings in the fuel and puts it in there for then it to be. So that's always kept topped up. So then that feeds the engine. And so if that did go wrong, it could be, and I'm not saying it is, but that could be the reason why the car stopped with enough fuel left in it, and that they weren't able to pump any fuel out to give them the sample. So for Seb's sake, I hope that's true. But I mean, that's the story they're kind of telling. Or they could have got it all wrong. I don't know. But it was kind of weird. Who else stopped? Someone else stopped right past start finish. Also, Williams, was it?
No, Esteban stopped right after.
That's
at the end of pit lane.
Oh, right. He missed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm misremembering. But anyway, so hopefully for Seb, it is a technical issue, which it could be. So we'll just see what surmises there. So it's a good time.
Well, they got to find 0.7 of a liter in there, because all they had left was 0.3. Squeezing the tubes out. Get that fuel bladder, squeeze it out.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. It would be a little weird because all the teams know that.
Right.
It would be a little odd to miss that, because that's something that all the teams have to provide at the end of every race.
Right. Right. And I mean, they can get it wrong for sure, but
you could,
if this race had been like going at a blazing pace and it was hotter than usual, but we had the stoppages, so there was at least 3 or 4 laps that weren't really full pace laps. So they can't change the fueling once the race starts, and they fuel the car based on it being a no yellow race, right? And then they try and burn fuel if they need to. So we'll see. Hopefully they didn't get it wrong, because I think that's there's one thing about cheating, but another thing, just that little scrutineering issue is a tough nut to tough thing to swallow. Isn't it?
Well, and fuel load would be a difficult thing to cheat on, because at the end of the day, you've got to produce a liter out of it, So
and you have to declare your fuel at the beginning anyway, as we saw Ferrari, I think, win a foul of that before too.
Yes, and it's very strict tests that they do.
Yeah.
It blew my mind when we worked with Shell on that, how critical that is. So Lance, not a good day. Lance took avoiding action of the Bottas bungle, but he locked up, went over the apex curb, got on the grass, became a passer at that point, and systematically removed Charles Leclerc out of the race, who also spun Daniel Ricciardo around. So, you could... we'll talk about Bottas in a minute, but I think Lance, it was good. Lance was quick saying, well, Bottas, and I was trying to get away from that. Sort of were. Yeah.
That's behind you, Lance. Yes.
Yeah. Sort of you were. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Everybody kicked Bottas ways down. Why not? So anyway, tough race. All right. Well, let's talk about Mercedes, shall we? Oh boy.
Get down.
Yes. Lewis Hamilton, P3, now P2, possibly, if Vettel is disqualified.
It's like P3 for now.
Yeah. So all of my rankings are because I did my notes right after the race. So apologies, but everybody moves up 1.
No apologies needed.
Yeah.
It's provisional. The results are still provisional.
That's right. Results are still provisional.
On the road. We can just
right. Bottas, a DNF. Lewis actually had a really good start from pole in the damp conditions. His teammate negated that start with the Bottas bungle, is what I'm calling it, which thankfully did not collect Lewis in the carnage, amazingly.
Collect everyone else, yeah.
But it pretty much took out all of Lewis's rivals. The restart after the red flag session was a challenge as all the cars went out on inters. But as Lewis was leading the pack for the formation lap, if he boxed for mediums and the cars behind him didn't, he's at the back, right? So he would be last starting from pit lane. But if he gridded up, which he did on inters, everybody else saw him grid up, everybody else boxes, everybody starts with the pit lane, it's mediums, it's a dry track. At that point, it's kind of like his own version of a Kobayashi Maru test, Paul. It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, well, it was a win-win. I mean, it would have been if he'd have come in and they'd all start on inters, he would still be in the lead because they'd all have to come in.
But they'd all have to come in anyway.
So I mean, the only bad choice was staying out. I don't think it was damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think he should have come in, and that was it. And he didn't. Yeah. And I know the teams can't
talk to him.
So
it's his call.
Else. So it's his call. Yeah.
And he missed it.
And he may, not, I don't know if he forgets that or was waiting for a call in or something like that, but it was his call and he made the mistake and he didn't, and everyone else just did the opposite. Right. So that was easier for them to do it. But in hindsight, I don't think he could have lost if he'd come in no matter what, even if everyone else had gone around.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know if he would have come in, started the pit lane, and everybody else stayed out. He'd have been in the back. He'd have come through. Eventually, they would have come out. Anything can happen. He would rather have erred on the side of track position, I guess, but I don't know. Toto says no. It was totally the right call. I tell you why I thought it was interesting to watch Toto say that.
Good old Toto.
Yeah, he's running cover. He's providing air cover for Lewis because Lewis missed it. And it was interesting post-race when Johnny asked, Lewis goes, I kept telling the team, it's dry. And then he caught himself mid-sentence and just bailed out. He completely bailed out of that conversation.
Yeah.
Because he pretty much knew, because he was heading down the road of blaming the team for it. And then pretty much backpedaled and bailed out of that whole line of questioning with Johnny.
Yeah. Well, did you hear Russell? I don't know what you're allowed to say. You're not allowed to say you're coming in either, I don't think, right? As a driver?
Yeah.
Because Russell said, everyone's going to come in instead of I'm coming in.
I'm coming in, right. Yeah, Russell's kind of like, it's really dry out here. I mean, everybody will be coming in.
Yeah.
Nod, wink. Including me. Get the tires ready. Yeah, good call. Excuse me. Yeah, so anyway, missed that one. But regardless, in the end, he lost that track position.
Yep.
And in the end, had to fight his way back on a two-stopper to the podium. Things were going relatively well on track. On a track that was hard to pass on until he got to Alonso. But regardless, he inherits P2 if the Vettel disqualification stays. And he takes the championship lead from Max, as does the team from Red Bull. And, it was basically another recovery drive for sure in that sense, coming from the back and just executed it incredibly well. And Alonso was tough to get around, but Alonso's tires eventually were going to give up, and Lewis kept enough life in his tires to make a run for it. But credit to Alonso, he ran Lewis out of time. But I still think it was a great run back to P3, what could be P2. And this is the case, Paul, when you're, it's like the British Grand Prix, this Grand Prix, this is Lewis and the team fighting back. I'm not exactly sure what was going on with the podium thing. You said he was dizzy or fatigued or whatever, thinking maybe he had long effects from COVID that he had or whatever it might be. But regardless, a good P3.
Yeah, no, it was an impressive race. I mean, we know how, even if you're in a Mercedes, how hard it is to pass at Hungary. I mean, a lot of superior cars had a lot of problems getting by a Haas, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So he had to skive his way through pretty much the whole field to get into that position. So I think, I know it wasn't a race win for him. I think in the end, he's probably pretty happy with that race, and a pretty fun one for him in the end. Certainly a challenge. And he got it done. So I think it was actually a really fine race. And then doing that second pit stop for the softer tires was very smart and just showed you, just how different, the pace of the car is with the new tire versus how everyone was actually racing just for track position,
Right. That's exactly right. Do you need me to endorse any other things you say?
I'm in a conversation with my wife later. Can you come?
Yeah. Very right, cheeky, Paul. I
right,
like
Paul.
it. Well, Paul, that's 100% correct. Why, thank you. That's what you should hire me to do. Just follow you around, not say anything, but when you make a statement, I just lean over your shoulder. Why, Paul, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Back in the corner.
Yeah, so good race for Lewis. And, I'm thinking at this point, if I'm Red Bull, I'm over at Aston Martin's garage, desperately trying to help them find that fuel.
Oh, not Verstappen belt.
Yeah, because if Lewis now has a lead, but if Vettel...
How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want?
I'll have an old-fashioned.
I'll have a margarita.
Now you can with the new Bartesian Duet Home Cocktail Maker. The new Bartesian Duet, Bartesian's most compact cocktail maker, crafts premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian Duet Cocktail Maker. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian Duet is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. And now, get our best deal ever on the new Bartesian Duet, plus free shipping when you go to bartesian.com/cocktail. Hurry, offer ends soon. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail. Bartesian.com/cocktail.
Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Common Threads are helping schools across the country learn about healthier food preparation. In Atlanta, they're joined by the Dream and will provide education, recipes, and knowledge to students and families about healthier options. Visit anthem.com/dream to learn more. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is the trade name of Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthcare Plan of Georgia, Inc.
Is disqualified, Lewis gets second place and even more points, right? So they don't want that to happen. So desperately, Red Bull need Aston Martin to stay in second place.
Yeah.
Let's talk about his teammate.
The VB, was it? What's it? VB, the VB guy?
Yeah, the VB guy.
Not going to work here anymore.
Not gonna work.
Bobs are coming,
right?
Valtteri. The Bobs are coming.
Well, he apologized for the mistake and took full blame for what happened, and he's going to have a 5-place grid penalty for the next race. Truly unfortunate. And what happened there? That was not good.
I have absolutely no thought as to why he did that.
Yeah.
Why he put himself in that position. There was no way that was going to come out good running that. I mean, I think in his head, he's like fighting for his position in the team, and then all of a sudden he's got a flub start and there's a McLaren in front of him. But being that close is, it's not going to work out. So I don't know what's going through his head doing that, because as soon as, Lando hit the brakes, we're all done for, So
yeah.
I can't explain that drive from him, as short as it was. It was not worthy of a Mercedes driver.
No, it was really unfortunate. I don't know, if it's frustration, if it's, he got off the line slow. Lando Norris and McLaren got around him. He's trying to make something out of nothing. It's a long race, settle in and get around the McLaren.
Yeah. But, it's the nature of Hungary, right? You lose a position, you may fight all race long to gain that position back,
get that
right?
back,
So
yeah, understood.
He was desperate, but that's the only explanation, not reason, but an explanation as to why he put himself in that, perilous position going down into the first turn.
Well, what should have perhaps been quiet desperation turned into very loud desperation. It reminded me of Roman Grosjean. Was it Monza where he missed the first turn and, flew over and took out like 3 or 4 cars?
Right. First lap nada, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really bad. And, it took out both the Red Bulls, which is just, everybody wants to see Red Bull fight Mercedes,
Yeah. It ruined a lot of people's races. I mean, he's not going to be getting invited to anyone's Christmas party now.
No one's going to be sending him a Harry and David fruit basket. That's for sure.
Right.
Because, he ruined a lot of people's races. That was just not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can talk about somebody's race he ruined. A Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, DNF. Carlos Sainz in P4, Leclerc on the receiving end of the first turn carnage, but not technically of the Bottas bungle, but I think it all played a part. But he did survive that, but he was taken out by Lance Stroll, who said he was avoiding the Bottas bungle. And that's what happened there. And that took Charles out pretty quickly, and he kind of ping-ponged into Daniel, spun Daniel Ricciardo around.
Yeah,
not good.
Bit of a nightmare. Yeah, he was very, very despondent with young Charles.
Yeah, he was not happy. I don't blame him.
No, I mean, I'm sure he saw opportunity lost there. Obviously, as we saw what happened to Ocon, it was there. It was there.
Yeah, for sure. And could have been there for Carlos. He had that bad qualifying situation, after his quali crash. So he started, a real deficit in the back, and then scythed his way all the way through the field. And I thought it was interesting, Paul, because, the team was talking to him, and then he was like, no, I'm still competitive. He was telling the team what strategy they should be doing, knowing that his pace was good. And, what a heads up moment for him in that race. I mean, he pegged Hamilton as the real person that he had to keep an eye on in the race, knew that that was their target. And when Hamilton boxed, he did too. That possibly saved his race. Drove really hard to stay at the front, which ends up giving him a podium if Vettel does get the disqualification. I just thought that was some serious race vision and strategy vision from Carlos, who was in the middle of the race, to be able to see what was going on, and give him the best chance for the podium. And I thought that was real impressive.
Some of his dad's genes blending down to him. There's been a lot of racing in history in his family, right? So I'm sure, he's obviously a pretty smart guy and knows what he's doing most of the time. But it is hard to call it from the cockpit for sure, especially in Formula One with as tight, the error to success timeline is, split seconds can make you a hero or a zero in pit stop strategy, etc. So it was definitely a very cool, calm, collected Sainz, and he seemed so disappointed when Lewis got by him. No, but because he knew he'd worked so hard, him and the team, working hard and driving and strategy to get him in that spot, which was probably not even thinkable at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He may have had a shot at Vettel and Ocon, but he got stuck behind Latifi kind of early on, and that made it difficult for him. But a great race from Carlos. I thought he did a fabulous job to recover. Lewis had a great recovery drive, but I think Carlos did too. Back up to where it was a great job. And you're right. It is difficult. And some of the really great drivers can see the entire strategy in their head of where they are. They know what their performance is. They know where they can gain more or manage better. And it just takes a really broad, perspective to be able to see that in real time while you're driving and to make those calls. And not every driver has that.
No, for sure.
So, and, maybe a lot of drivers think they have that, but the team has to tell them that they can see everything, like this next team, which is AlphaTauri. Had Pierre Gasly in P6, Yuki Tsunoda. The Bottas bungle cost Pierre positions. He had to try to avoid that carnage, but it also benefited Yuki. He had started farther back, so he was able to make up several positions early on with that. The team reversed the running order when Gasly fought all the way back up through the field, caught up with Yuki. That didn't make the Japanese driver very happy, and he let the team know about it. Oh, get the F out of the way. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, he's like, oh, he's slow. Get him out of the way. And then finally the team says, yeah, well, Yuki, we see everything from a strategy standpoint. Just calm down and race. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, Yuki needs to shut up.
You know, I wrote it in the race review that I posted. Look, this guy's talking like somebody who feels absolutely entitled to be in that car.
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder if he feels that way because he's got serious money backing that's paying that team. So he feels like, by God, this team's here for me and we're paying you. I don't know what the relationship is or how much money, but I will say at this point, he's making the team look foolish. You know?
Yeah, it's not good. It's just, I mean, the amount of mistakes he's made, you know, he needs to be humble and calm your temper and just shut up for a few races, you know, and because they're not jumping all over your crap when you're flying off the road and hitting stuff. So just be the number 2 that you should be this year. Learn from Pierre Gasly, who's an extremely impressive driver and gets the cars to the finish and gets it up in the sharp end, and just sit back and learn and stop fussing around and swearing. You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel bad for the team in one sense. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on both of them, but you know, at the end of the day, this isn't Franz Toast's first rodeo. But the same could be said about his suspension mechanic or the guys that changed this. It's not none of these people's first rodeo. These folks all been doing this a long time, you know. And for him to come in and start acting like they're all a bunch of junior leaguers, well, that's not the case at all. You know, he's the junior leaguer here. So yeah, he's quick. There's no doubt about it. But
dude, you doesn't always cut it, man.
Yeah, it doesn't always.
You got to be a complete package to stay in Formula One for a long time.
Right. Got to be more like Pierre. Ooh, did I say, was that my outside voice? So, hey, Pierre didn't have the pace to run down Alonso, but with all the attrition of the race, you know, getting both cars home and in the top 7, I think is a good result. And Pierre, you know, kind of having suffered from the Bottas bungle, I think he made a pretty good recovery drive and got back up to P6. A good drive.
Yeah, very good, very good. He's still doing it, man.
He is.
I love this guy. I think he's just on
too.
it every single weekend, and even if the car's not there, he's knocking on the 10th place. You know, and when it is, he's a top 6 guy.
Yeah,
more often than not now, right?
Yeah, all these young guys. You look at Pierre, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, you know, all the young guns like that, George Russell, of course, all of them really starting to hone that racecraft, you know, getting those consistency down, not doing the rookie stuff, you know, which all rookies do, but, you know, really starting to get into their own, you know, and it's just been real fun to watch. Pierre and Lando in particular, I think. I said a couple of races ago, you know, that the UK has a new hero in Lando, and you know, they mean, you know, watch him, he's going to be a future, really going to remember a couple of eyes. And no, ain't no future. We're not talking about future. I know you guys are still hung up on Lewis, and Lewis is awesome. I get it. But the social media and everybody is there for Lando, man. Lando has become the man, you know?
Yeah. There was a guest of the team this week down there in Coda, and there's a young lady there who just started watching the Drive to Survive series. She started at the beginning of the summer and she finished it, and she's like the massive Lando fan. You know, I mean, it's, that series has done a great job. But Lando is just like a magnet for the new fan more than anything else, I think. So it's interesting to see that happen.
It's something about him that just resonates with fans, you know, and everybody feels like, you know, okay, so a lot of the attention now and everything is moving over to Lando and away from Lewis or whatever. You know, Lewis still has millions and millions of fans, but you know, this is normal. You know, it's not a slight towards Lando or Alonso or Vettel or anything like that. Right. You know, these are the older guard in Formula One. Schumacher, same thing. This is normal, you know, so it's nothing untoward against any of the old guard. You know, Kimi, same thing. But you know, Lando kind of has that sort of devil may care vibe to him a little bit. You know, he can be cheeky, you know, like Kimi does, and people just loved that about Kimi. You know, so it's been fun to watch.
It has.
Williams, speaking of George Russell P9, Nicholas Latifi in P8, Nick and George finally gave the team their first points deposit in the championship bank. Nicholas weaved through the Bottas bungle and slotted third for the restart. And look, there's a lot of room for errors at that point, but he didn't make any. He did a great job. George is further back. And thought he could gain some positions in the pit lane, which unfortunately he can't, George. So he had to give all those places back, but he drove hard to finish on his teammate's tail there for a dual points haul, which ends, Paul, a 2-year pointless streak for that team. George literally in tears after the race when they asked him about it, just overwhelmed with emotion, said he was a little surprised by that. Before we get to George, I mean, you know, you got to hand props to Nick. It was a great drive.
It really was. I mean, as I said, you know, as we're talking about Esteban, you know, holding off Vettel, he was holding up pretty much everyone else, right? And not making a mistake. I think the Williams probably benefited him because obviously we know it doesn't run in traffic so well. So he was in the lead. He didn't have, you know, because the other two were off and running. So he basically had clean air to run in. So he made the most of it. Didn't make mistakes. We've seen him make mistakes in the past, unforced errors, and he didn't do it in probably the highest pressure situation he's been in so far. There's pressure on himself. There's pressure on the team, you know, to try and get some points, you know, and it's all been laid on George Russell's shoulders. And lo and behold, you know, he gets, as you say, he got through the mess and came out in third place. And it was inevitable he was going to drop back a lot, but he didn't drop back very much. He kept it going. So great for the Canadians. You know.
Yeah, it was a great result for Nick. I thought it was fabulous. A great run for him, and George had a great run. And you know, I don't think it takes any varnish off George. Look, George has the measure of Nick. You know, I think that's pretty comprehensive. But I think it was more important to George and Nick. And I don't know that George really cares whether he was 8th or 9th. I mean, he'd like to have been the highest scoring, but at the end of the day, I think it's for the team. And to get both those cars home, I think George and Nick are both elated with it.
Yeah, and then, you know, we heard that radio conversation in the race where he's, you know, hey, if you need to compromise my race to help Nick get the points for the team, I am more than willing to do that. And that just, you know, once again, you know, nice going, George. Makes you you are the guy that everyone thinks you are. So,
right. And I think there was a similar thing with Bottas at the beginning, right before the start. You know, if I need to compromise my race to help Lewis, let me.
No brakes. Oops.
Oh, no brakes. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. There you go, team.
That's one of those trick shots, man. You know, like a shuffleboard. You know, you go bing, 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 try and knock them all out. He's probably a shuffleboard champion. You know.
I know. It's crazy. Great for Williams, though. Red Bull, bad weekend for Red Bull. Bad 2 races on the trot. Max Verstappen down P10, Perez DNF. If there was a moment when Red Bull's title bid unraveled, it would be the last 2 races. And this weekend, the bad news is that both drivers may need an engine change, and that's going to garner a grid penalty in an upcoming race. So, I mean, this... On balance, Red Bull have got a lot of wounds to lick over this summer break, and they got to think about this hard, about their championship title. And, they've been developing this car. Toyota's like, we're done developing this car, whatever. Yeah, and they're not. Everything, it's all fair in love and war, as Paul mentioned earlier. And Christian's got to sit down. They got to figure out what they're going to do here. They have lost the Drivers' Championship lead, the Constructors' Championship lead. They could be facing engine changes. Depending on what side, which camp you're in, you could feel like, tough. That's racing, tough. On the other side, you could be saying, and we wouldn't be in this position if Lewis hadn't hit us and damaged our engine, and now we got this engine, and now Bottas hits Perez, and now we got to change his engine. I mean, this is silly. How much? If the cynical side of Red Bull's argument and fan base, or even Christian Horner, could be, I guess this is how Mercedes needs to win the championship, by hitting us and taking us out, right? That's the incredibly cynical side. On the other side of this thing is, this is racing. People hit each other. It's hard racing. That's the way it is. The Bottas thing, I'm sure Mercedes would say, yeah, that was truly unfortunate, and we wish that didn't happen. And I don't know that they do. They wouldn't have. That's not the kind of racer Toto is. No. But anyway, very tough, Paul. Both Max and Sergio punted by Bottas. This ended Sergio's race immediately, but Max lit back to the pits. The team did a Herculean effort to try to repair all the damage that he had to his car during the stoppage. When the race restarted, it was clear Max didn't have the performance he needed out of that car. Horner said that they basically had as much downforce as a Haas car, which if you're not keeping track, that's bad. So yeah, that's a bad deal. Ultimately, Max fought back for a point. It's the best they could do, but 1 point in 2 race weekends, that's bad. That loses championships. And you're up against Lewis and Mercedes, and you can't do those things, period, because they don't. Like I said, team has a lot of soul searching to do over the break, and they need to regroup and come back stronger for sure. But to be fair, Paul, I think Max looks a little unsettled in that car all weekend. That car wasn't quite hooked up this weekend.
Yeah, surprising, right? We'd have thought Red Bull's, this is their track. But I think the ideology from both cars, they've kind of flip-flopped the Mercedes and the Red Bull, because now we're seeing the Red Bull do better at the faster, high-paced tracks, and the Mercedes, had them covered in at least in qualifying, So it's interesting how both teams have gone on a different tangent. But
Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Common Threads are helping schools across the country learn about healthier food preparation. In Atlanta, they're joined by the Dream and will provide education, recipes, and knowledge to students and families about healthier options. Visit anthem.com/dream to learn more. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is the trade name of Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthcare Plan of Georgia, Inc.
I think if Verstappen had been comfortable, he would have been on pole and would never have been a part of this melee in the first place.
Yeah, I agreed.
What do they do as a team? I mean, obviously the unfortunate events were back-to-back, and was obviously a Mercedes involved in both, but they need to disassociate themselves from worrying and complaining and blaming and focus on looking ahead. You keep looking behind you or looking to the side of you or looking to blame someone, it's going to take your eye off the ball. What you really need to do is execute, and they just need to get back to executing as they did. Yes, I mean, none of this stuff is something that they did wrong, but that means that you don't change what you were doing at the beginning of the season. Just re-energize yourself, dust it off, and just look ahead and just get back on the game. That's all.
Right. Yeah, they've been here before. This is a heck of a team. This isn't their first rodeo either. It's a ground war at this point with them, and they got to execute. Let's see. Next up, Alfa Romeo. Not a lot to talk about here with Alfa. You got Raikkonen P11, Giovinazzi in P14. Antonio tried to start on softs. That didn't work. He came right back in, and then that didn't work. The red flag came out. He also got a 10-second penalty for speeding a pit lane. That put him in last place during the race. And then Kimi looked to be having a better race, but then he had that unsafe release, which ended Mazepin's race. That wasn't good. And that garnered a penalty and then saw Kimi go backwards and out of the points too. So not a lot to talk about. In a race with this much attrition, this is nowhere near where Alpha should have finished.
Right. Yeah, that's the big thing, right? It's opportunity missed for sure.
Yeah.
So, whatever they did, they didn't have enough.
Yeah. McLaren, Lando Norris, DNF, Ricardo, P12. Lando had a great start, looked to be slotting into third behind Lewis and Max. I mean, this was going to measure up to be a heck of a race. Lewis in the lead, Max and Lando. This would have been really cool. Unfortunately, we were all robbed of that by the Bottas bungle. That ended his race at turn 1, and then Lando got hit and pushed into Max. That compromised Max's race. Lando had a perfect record of scoring points in every race so far up until now, and he was pretty upset, saying that, apologies don't change a thing.
Yeah.
So that was pretty draconian of him, but like that. So that was his race. Dan had his own version of bumper cars going when Leclerc hit his car twice, spinning him around due to the Stroll incident hitting Leclerc. Like Lando, Dan also had a lot of damage on his car, limped it home and out of the points. Unfortunately, the team, this is kind of a bummer because the team did bring a lot of upgrades to Hungary, and we don't really know how those worked. I will say that they seemed a little bit on their back foot during free practice with these upgrades. So I'm a little concerned about the upgrades. I'm sure they are too. Not quite sure how this is going to play out, but we may never know until the next race.
Or if there's any of those parts left.
Or if there's any parts left, right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there are upgrades that you need to get your head around and maximize, and it's the beginning step, right? Every time you do something big, you kind of go backwards a little bit to go forward. Sometimes you're lucky and it's just like instant measuring, the wind tunnel said this and it did this and this is what we did and boom, we got it. But sometimes you have to learn all those upgrades and get to maximize it. And you can sometimes see the potential, even though the potential is not showing in a lap time. So we'll just have to defer that to the next race, obviously.
Yep. Let's see. Haas, Mick Schumacher, P13, Mazepin DNF. Nikita had his race ended by Kimi, who was released in front of the Russian. That damaged his car and ruined his race. Mick had a much better day, had raced hard, really hard in the top 10 against Verstappen and Russell on merit. And in the end, they finished ahead of the Alphas. So that was good for Mick. I thought he looked pretty good. I know he's down P13.
Feisty.
He's in a Haas, but he was, got a little bit of his dad in him, got his elbows out.
He got the elbows out. Yeah. He didn't give up. Didn't say, oh, well, everyone's faster than me, I should just let him go. No, he fought it out. And realistically, with Latifi up in third, no one was getting away from him either. So he had, he had a carrot in front of him, and every reason to fight as hard as he could. And it took a few cars a number of times. I can't remember who was following him for the longest. Max, who was obviously didn't. They were like twinsies, right?
They
with
were,
their downforce. So that's why Max had a hard time. But once Max did finally get by, it seemed a bit easier for everybody else. But it was great to see Mick. I'm sure he enjoyed it intensely, especially having a Verstappen behind him to play with.
Yeah. So that was good. Well, that's how they ended. Let's hand out some awards. First award is always Move of the Race. Woo! Okay, Paul, Move of the Race.
I'm going to give it to, just looking at a pass, but Lewis going around the outside of Yuki Tsunoda.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, you could probably hear him swearing, from his car there. It's a bit disturbing, a bit distracting. But
guys, this is effing crazy. Get Lewis out of the way. He's slow.
So, but doing that outside pass and trusting Yuki Tsunoda to not just punt into you is something also. But it was that there had to be, sometimes you saw some big brave maneuvers because it had to happen, else you just stay in the train. So that was a great pass, and they both got through the corner, which was surprising to me actually at the time.
My move of the race, I had the Hamilton undercut. That was a pretty critical call and timing, and I thought that was pretty brilliant by Mercedes and Lewis. And Lewis had to execute and did. I just thought that was really good. And then the Alonso defense. I'll go with Alonso defense because that handed the team the win. Yeah.
Biggest entertainment factor of the week.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Donkey of the race. Okay, you know what? Just stop because we know that was Bottas. There ain't no two ways around that.
Yeah.
You could argue Stroll too, but Bottas, that was just bad.
Yeah.
I'm not
Actually,
even gonna
second
go
best
through
would be Lewis's choice of staying out.
Staying on the grid. Yeah,
but that's way behind.
I kept telling the team, All right, Lewis. Then finally, drive of the race. Good God. That's right, Paul. Drive of the race. Who'd you give it to?
I got to give it to Esteban. Why not?
Yeah,
his first win. He deserved it. Lots of pressure. Didn't put a foot wrong. Easy to do, but very easy to do. We've seen that before. So good on you, mate. There's another trophy in your cabinet.
Good on him. Yeah, that's a worthy recipient. I kind of went back and forth between Alonso and Carlos. I thought Carlos had a fantastic race too. But I'm going to give it to Alonso, I think, because I think with Carlos, he would have even had more of a fantastic race had he not bend it during quali.
Right.
So I'm going to give it to Alonso. I think Alonso, that was great to see the old Alonso back, it
really was.
Running defense and and it was clear Esteban, was very complimentary of Alonso, after the race and said, everybody told me a bunch of bad stuff about Alonso, but that, they don't know the truth. And I think Alonso's really helping him out. And it's just great to see. Yeah. Good stuff. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Shumi Toronto asked this, Paul. Hey, guys, don't know if you'll know the answer to this one, but here goes. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, hey.
No.
You said, hey, guys, and I said, hey, back.
I
was just saying, hey to you.
Paul, you're funny. All right. Got it. Hey, guys. Hey, Shumi Toronto. All right, I'm with you. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but here goes. There's recently been some 2021 tire testing going on with the 18-inch wheels, and apparently different cars have been used, including so-called mule car, by the different teams. He wanted to know. He was saying, as I understood it, you couldn't possibly modify the current cars due to for the new wheels, as the suspension geometry and everything is completely different. I'm sure the teams don't even have a chassis ready to test. So what cars are being used for these tests? It was very confusing and nobody had really explained it. Can you? We can certainly try to. So the mule car, a few years ago when Pirelli was wanting to test the new tires they're coming out with, they wanted mule cars because they couldn't use the existing cars. So they need these quote unquote mule cars. I think Renault had taken a couple older cars so they could kind of change the suspension or whatever they needed to do to the car. And they basically kind of gave those to Pirelli to test. And then Pirelli got some drivers to come out and test it on these cars. And typically, they're older cars, like 2 or 3 year old cars that they're using for that. But in particular, Paul, I think it's just the older car that they can change the suspension, I think.
Right. Yeah. It's the full tempo is the actual.
That's it.
Chosen choice of the mule.
I didn't want to have to reveal that, but
I know. Sorry, I let it out. But Jackie Stewart pushed it forward, and no one could find any reason not to use the tempo because it makes.
Well, yeah.
Ford, I think, have done such a good job on the tempo.
Yeah.
They did do a great job on the tempo.
And Pirelli couldn't say no. Yeah. So, I mean, all the different cars are designed different ways. Some are more adaptable for more prototyping on them. Obviously, these cars would never pass through a F1 scrutineering. There might be some beefed up parts for safety-wise that just wouldn't figure itself in. So they'll look at the different cars. They'll figure out, okay, which car, is most likely to be able to accept some different suspension pieces, et cetera, like that. Yeah. And whatever team's selling them one cheap as well. But you do need a car that's current enough to be able to generate the downforce and behave in the same certain way that the cars that next year are going to come. So it has to have the same engine and gearbox configuration, etc. So yeah, it's hard to know exactly what car that is.
Yeah, and it's got to be close enough to the kind of current car. It can't be, this year's model, of course, but it's got to be close enough to the current car so the impact is, isn't radically different. And in this case, that's what Renault did a couple of years ago. They kind of loaned one of their cars to because Pirelli can't go out and doesn't have the wherewithal to build their own F1 car.
Right.
And they don't really have the money just to go out and buy a current Mercedes car, F1 car, and nor would Mercedes sell them one. So they got like a mule car. So they got to find an older car that one of the teams is allowing Pirelli to have and use for their tire testing program. Yep. That's basically what it is. Mm-hmm. Let's see, PGS.
I think initially they used the F2 car. That was the easiest car to start with.
Right.
And I think they probably learned a lot from that on whereabouts things need to be, and then transpose that to an actual F1 car with that learning.
Right. PGS, he was talking about the sprint race and qualifying. He didn't really feel like the sprint was an improvement on the qualifying entertainment factor. And he was thinking, gosh, look what happened on turn 1 on the first lap at this race. What would have happened if that would have happened in the sprint race, right? Those kind of things. And, good point. So PG was saying, all right, so my 2 questions for Paul, not me. So I'm not chiming in on this, Paul.
Okay.
It's going for you, buddy. In your opinion and experience, what is the best qualifying format? That's the first question.
I mean, I love the current format. I don't think that should change with the 3-tier system, Q1, Q2, 3. I think they've kind of nearly perfected that process.
And then he says, well, what changes would you make to the present format?
Yeah, I don't think I would actually make any. I mean, I think with that, I mean, I haven't thought long and hard about little nuances that you would want to change. I don't want to change it to trip up the fastest cars, right? I think it's a good blend of allowing the fastest cars to still remain the fastest cars and not try and tie their shoelaces as they try and walk off, like we had with the Pirelli tires. We're mixing up the show and this car's gonna be fast and that. Well, yeah, that's just trickery. That's not performance or, logical thought by a team and putting the best driver up forward. Right. So I think it's a good blend of that. Now with the qualifying race, we still get the Q3, the 3-tier system in qualifying, so we're not missing that. I don't think that the qualifying race should count as a pole position. I know that for sure, because it's not a pole position. There's a very difference between qualifying and being in a race, and I don't think they should blur the lines there at all. So I'm fine with there being a second race. So I don't have a lot against it. I don't want to see it throughout every single weekend. I'm okay with things being a little different on occasion, just to give yourself a new vision point, right? It's not going to really change a whole lot. And if you did have a crash at the beginning, maybe that's exactly what they wanted to happen, right? Send the fast guys at the back, and then have Latifi leading a race for the qualifying or whatever. But that's it. I think for the fans at the races, it's good to have 2 races, and it's a challenge. But at least it's the same challenge for everybody, and we're not trying. I'm still more against DRS than I have a qualifying race. I'll tell you that much, because at least it's on equal foot for everybody. Everyone gets to qualify, get their position, and everyone gets to race for their position without impeding someone else more than another. Yeah. Right.
Well done, Paul. Well done.
Oh, thanks.
I like it. Yeah. Okay. I like it. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. This is what we think of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Let us know what you think, and you can do that by going to theparcfermé.com and sharing your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility, as always. If you like the podcast, you can go to iTunes, give us a good rating over there, give us a little love. If you really like the podcast, you can go to our Patreon account and support us over at Patreon. And we cannot thank our patrons enough for your kind support, because we could not and would not do this podcast if it was not for our Patreon supporters. We are only Patreon supported podcast. So it's not like we've got big advertising bucks or anything like that. So thank you so much for your support. Paul, you get a 3-week break apparently.
Not really.
Well, from this you do.
From this I do, yes.
No, because I've seen your schedule. You're insane. Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
In 7 days, I'm going to be at 3 different racetracks. You know, oh, poor baby, right? Yeah, it's
well, but
it's
from a fan's perspective. Oh, wouldn't that suck? But when it's your day job, it's a grind. Yeah.
It's going to be a grind. By the end of this next 2 weeks, I'm going to be pooped out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Well, best of luck to you at that. So it's awesome. So, all right. Well, then next week I will scare up Grace, and we'll talk about what F1 news is not out there because they're on summer break. But I'm sure we'll find something. So, all right. Until that,
if you're in the heart of racing, going to be at Road America next week.
That's right.
So. People are allowed in the paddock, so anybody who listens to podcasts, please come by and say hi.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to be part of the IMSA Hot Lap program, I'm going to be wheeling one of those IMSA Hot Lap cars around before the races this week. So that's
excellent.
At my favorite tracks, I was really happy. I got the call, hey, would you like to give people rides around Elkhart Lake? It's like, yes.
I love Elkhart. Love it. It's a great track. So if you guys are going to that race and you're going through the paddock, look for Paul. Number 23, Aston Martin. That's the team, Heart of Racing. Look for Paul. And that should be a lot of fun. So there is racing to watch next weekend. So.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Gamer, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
It's not what I feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.
Knowledge is power, and when it comes to your health, the power is in your scan. At Virtual Imaging, skilled technicians use the most advanced technology to preemptively scan your body for underlying health issues. Wouldn't you want to know if you're at increased risk for heart disease, cancer, or other life-threatening diseases? Now you can, right here in Atlanta. Visit virtualimagingatl.com to book your appointment and receive a complimentary heart scan. It's time to be in the know about your health. virtualimagingatl.com. HSA or FSA accepted.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code play100. That's code play100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.